Hi neighbors, this is Angie with Beauties and the Bigfoot, and today's topic of discussion is Bigfoot and our interactions with them and the different types of interactions that we have with them. The first group of interactions, it seems to fall into two main categories. And the first category is those that have interactions with them on the short term. Those campers, the hikers, the hunters, they are not in these spaces with the Bigfoot on a long-term, day-to-day basis. They're basically going into the Bigfoot territory, into their homes, and that's when they have the interactions with them. And the other category is those that actually share a space with the Bigfoot. Those are people whose homes are in the woods or bordering the woods or one side of the woods or in the middle of the woods. You are there for a long-term period of time, so you have interactions with the Bigfoot through a day-to-day lens. You're sharing your space with the Bigfoot, so you learn to coexist and live a day-to-day routine with the Bigfoot. Those two interactions seem to be drastically different. The interactions between the ones that are, we'll call them short-term and long-term. The short-term interactions seem to be a little bit more hostile, a little bit more aggressive. There are a few out there that are just, I spotted a Bigfoot, he just kept going, he ignored me, or I saw the Bigfoot and I went the other way. Those interactions seem to be a little bit more of the aggressive ones, because we are coming into the Bigfoot's home, the Bigfoot's territory, and it's just like a barging in of us into their homes. So they seem to react a little bit more aggressively than they would to the people that actually live and share space with them. Those encounters, a lot of the times you'll get things being thrown at them, equipment being destroyed, cars being pushed over, cars having boulders or thrown at them, or trees pushed over onto them, or big dents in the hoods of the car or on the sides of the car. It seems to be Bigfoot's way of saying, this is my home and I don't want you in here. So they react a little bit more aggressively. The other encounter is the one where the people are sharing the space with the Bigfoot, seem to be, for the most part, a little calmer, a little gentler, a little bit more pleasant. Now that doesn't mean that when you share space with them, all the encounters are going to be pleasant. Because some are not going to be pleasant at all because they don't want you there and they will basically chase you out. And it all boils down to one thing: respect and the different types of Bigfoots and their personalities. Like with any other species on this earth, you have different types of the species that will like you and different types of the species that won't. Like with a dog, for example, not all dogs like all people. Some dogs' personalities just don't match with some people's personalities. It's the same thing with Bigfoot. Some of them seem to be a lot more tolerable than others. And some just want to bluff and see if they can scare you away. I personally have been growled at. I've been whooped at. I've been sung to, and yes, they do sing. They make this like, woo, with a no P on the end. And depending on what area I go into, luckily for me, when I go into different areas, I've had, for the most part, great interactions. I haven't had anything violent. I have had small rocks thrown. I think it was just to get my attention. I didn't feel any malice out of that, or I didn't feel threatened in any way. And when I go into a place, if I get growled at, I leave. A growl pretty much means, don't come in here. We don't, it's a warning. And it wasn't anything that was a terrible, it was a low growl. It was a warning. It sounded like a warning to me. Like a dog will warn you before they bite you most of the time. That's what this was. I've also went into an area, and when I was getting ready to go into that area, there happened to be a metal building by that area, and this building was banged on. So I took that as a do not come in here, because it was a very extremely, it was a warning. I was pretty far away from this building and heard the bang on the metal, and it was a definite do not come in here. So, you know what? I turned around and I did not go in there. And it's about respect. And it's not always, I think sometimes they just don't want to be bothered. They're out there living their Bigfoot lives, and just like us, sometimes we don't want to be bothered with other people. So we just, warn them away in whatever way that is. And when you're in the woods and you're hunting or you're hiking or you're camping, I think the more of us that go out there and are doing the hiking, and there seems to be a lot more people hiking nowadays than there was like 10 or 15 years ago, in the camping, because we want to be out into the outdoors. So the more people that go into the woods, the more chances are that people are going to encounter this species. It's just the way that it is. The more people that are around, the more chances are that you're gonna have an encounter with them, especially when you go into their territory. So those are the different types, and why I think that the encounters differ is because, going in there short term, like the hunting and the hiking and the camping, you're going into their territory for a small amount of time. And then the other end of the spectrum is when you share property with them, you get to notice certain times of day. Okay, this happens at a certain time of day, or I've heard this at a certain time of day. You get to know their routines, and they get familiar with you, because whether you see them or not, they are always watching. I'd say 90% of the time watching, especially if you would share property with them. From everything that I've read and I've encountered, they are, as people would call them, nosy. They like to know what's going on. Of course, they would have to be nosy if they are trying to stay hidden and not be discovered. They're going to have to want to know where you're at so that they can avoid you or go the other way, so that they are not seen by you. So I think that's the two main different reasons why the encounters seem to be so different, is because of, number one, the place where you encounter them, and number two, the length of time that you're around when you have these encounters. I think the more that they are around you, the less surprised and skittish they are. They're not going to be as aggressive, because they will have settled into a routine, if you want to call it that, of knowing your movements, so they know what mostly to expect. Whereas if you come across them when you're hunting or you're hiking or you're camping, that's more of a surprise, because they don't expect you to be there. So I think, like with any other species, it shocks them, and I do believe that they get scared just like we do. I don't think to the extent that we get scared, but I do think they're, maybe scared is a bad word, maybe cautious would be a better word, to describe them in their interactions when we surprise them. So that's a little bit about what I think the differences in the interactions are, and why some are pleasant and some are not so pleasant. And also, I do think, like with any other species, there are some that are just fed up with everything, and they're just mean. They're just mean. Or they've had bad interactions with us as human beings, and so they just don't like all humans, period, because they've had bad interactions with somebody shooting at them or whatever that be. I think as a general rule of thumb, they just would rather not have anything to do with us if they could. But since we are building and encroaching into their territory, they have to learn how to live amongst us, which is why I think it's a lesser aggressive interaction when you are living near them rather than the just short-term camping. So if you guys have any thoughts, feel free to comment, and thank you. Have a good night.